fake silhouette, avoiding every threat. I wanna stay like a silhouette, but I can't do that. No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that.
Hey Internet friends, as we continue to chronicle the truly strange happenings of 2020, I'm beginning to wonder, if we lived in tyranny, would the majority of Americans realize it? Would it be a conscious thing we acknowledged every single day? Or would tyranny be something packaged to us for our own benefit, for the greater good? If our society teetered on the edge of tyranny, just waiting for the push, would any of us notice when it happened? The definition of tyranny is oppressive power, especially oppressive power exerted by government, with a tyrant being a sole person exercising power or control in a cruel, unreasonable, or arbitrary way. In high school, most of us read George Orwell's 1984, a dystopian novel which describes the dangers of a tyrannical and totalitarian state exerting its force over the people, and the three slogans of the ruling party are: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. But the thing is, Orwell describes a society under oppressive rule in which everything the state does seems normal to the people living in it. With the first sentence of the book reading, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Orwell worked for the British Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as the BBC, during the Second World War, and he hated it. He hated the BBC, describing the BBC as something halfway between a girls' school and a lunatic asylum. It was through this experience that Orwell created a new political lexicon throughout his novel, 1984. Warning us about newspeak and showing us that words can be used and abused to obtain power, and thought crimes are thoughts that are in opposition to the party and, of course, illegal. He had first-hand knowledge of the inner workings of one of the biggest propaganda outlets. And even though his work was published in 1949, he was already warning us of the telescreen, or a surveillance device that received and transmitted simultaneously, that could see and hear anything above a whisper. Sound familiar, Siri? Sound familiar, Alexa? It's popular to say that Orwell's novel wasn't a work of fiction, it was a work of political prophecy. But is what is happening now, all of this that we've seen this year and in years prior, the fulfillment of Orwell's prophecy? A world where everyone would applaud their own imprisonment? The United States has been at war nearly my entire life. Propaganda, surveillance, and perpetual war is the norm. Walk into a crowd and ask people about Afghanistan, and most people won't know that U.S. troops are still there, in the graveyard of empires. We tried to leave this year, but Representative Liz Cheney, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, has moved to halt the removal of troops. And gee golly, do you think it's because Liz Cheney and the Cheney family have a vested interest in perpetual war? With their intimate connection to Halliburton, as Dick Cheney has served as the CEO from 1995 to 2000? Halliburton is a government contractor and oil services company that initially got off the ground through the help of Bain & Company, ran by former presidential nominee and sitting Senator Mitt Romney. Since the early 2000s, Halliburton has been awarded billions of dollars in contracts in Afghanistan alone. But the media tells us that U.S. troops are in Afghanistan in order to liberate the people, kill them terrorists, and promote freedom, not line the pockets of government contractors and corporations. But the problem is, there are so many distractions, most people don't realize the trajectory of this ongoing deception of perpetual war and propaganda. And you could speculate this is due to many factors: the successful implementation of ideological subversion, the 24-hour news cycle, work-life balance or lack thereof, and the rise of hedonism that rewards people's endless consumption through sensory pleasure. So that free time is spent pursuing pleasures in the form of the physical and the material, drugging ourselves with social media, alcohol, pills, food, and porn as a means of momentary pleasure and escapism. Which is why I wonder, would the majority of people know if they lived in tyranny? When the media simply makes lies truth and truth lies, would the majority of people notice the destruction of our personal freedoms and liberties with propaganda hitting them in the face left and right? With media working in tandem with social media algorithms to pit people against each other? Dividing us by black and white, by Democrat and Republican, by Christians, Muslims, Jews, and atheists. by vaccine injectors and the vaccine hesitant, by mask wearers and anti-maskers, by those who will comply and those who will not. It really seems like whatever the goal is, this pandemic has accelerated the plan into warp speed. The pandemic led to more than a third of the world's population being placed on lockdown to slow the spread of the virus, which resulted in a sharp rise in unemployment, a stock market crash in February, school shutdowns, an increase in debt on the consumer and government level, and you can't forget about riots and civil unrest. What began as the government promising the shutdown would last for just a few weeks to slow the spread of the virus and alleviate undue stress on hospitals extended for months. Of course, the government stimulus package was a rescue package with a price tag of $2 trillion, awarding emergency financial assistance to people and businesses. Typically, each average individual received $1,200 and $500 per child claimed as a dependent. Those who had to file for unemployment also received a federal boost of $600 a week. What they didn't tell you is that the stimulus package awarded $135 billion in tax breaks to millionaires with big business bailouts. The richest people in the world saw their net worth surge more than 50% since the start of the pandemic. This was essentially the greatest transfer of wealth, the greatest heist that's ever happened while we were told by the government to stay at home and obey. Now here's where it gets good, and by good I mean horrible. Fresh off the press this morning, millions of Americans' unemployment payments will abruptly shrink if Congress doesn't find a solution in the next week to extend these $600 a week unemployment benefits. So we must rely on Congress to find a solution to a problem they themselves manufactured by shutting down the economy. Today's date is Friday, July 17th. Unemployment benefits in literally next week, and the 2 weeks to flatten the curve have long passed months ago. The virus situation is only getting worse with the propagated numbers and fear. Masks have been mandated in many states, with retailers like Walmart, Kohl's, Publix, and Kroger mandating them in their stores. Personally, what I'm seeing on my end are long lines wrapped around mobile testing centers, more agitation towards those not wearing masks in public, and a general attitude of comply or get denied service. And you better not put up a fuss, otherwise someone will record you and put it on the internet for you and your entire family to be identified publicly. Doxed, and your outbursts forwarded to your employer with the expectation that they should fire you for your insolence. As the school year is starting up at the end of the summer, and most schools are doing online distance learning as their preferred method of education during the lockdown and as virus fears persist, what are parents supposed to do with their child at home all day? With an older child, maybe this isn't as much of a concern, but for parents of younger children, how will parents be able to make that work with both parents needing to work in order to pay bills? Clearly, you can't just leave an elementary schooler at home all day. Somebody's got to quit their job. You know, I'm a big advocate of homeschooling and moms staying at home with their babies, but it should be their freedom to decide that for themselves and their families. I see the writing on the wall here, the elimination of the middle class. More people forced into unemployment will yield in more reliance on government to cover financial needs. And to receive those financial benefits, what do you got to do? You got to comply. You have to do what you're told. Today, it's wear a mask while you're getting your Publix chicken tender sub. Tomorrow, it's answer a call from a contact tracer about a barbecue you went to 2 weeks ago. Next week, it's a mandatory vaccine for your children to return to school, part of the employment requirements for your new job, or the okay to travel by plane. I mean, please tell me if I'm being sensational or alarmist. I think I'm just being real here. Things are not getting better. We are willfully giving away our freedoms, just handing them over, never taking into consideration who is benefiting from our compliance. Unlike in centuries past, we lack action. We've replaced it with reaction and outrage, but it's not the same thing as action. Vigorously typing emotionally charged social media posts on a glass screen isn't the same thing as action. This new lockdown, fighting viruses that crop up, whether it's corona, bubonic plague, or Ebola, is the new war on terror. Endless. So again, I pose the question. If we lived in tyranny, would the majority of Americans realize it? What about the next generation who is born into it? Will they even know what they lost? What do you think, internet friends? You know, I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon. Bye.